Hello, everybody. I'm super excited to have Lloyd here with me. Every time we talk, I get to learn so much. But this time, I thought we're going to use our engineering brains to try to engineer the world for the better. And this is an unstructured kind of thinking that we're going to do. So I don't know if Lloyd, I made it clear from the get-go, but finding a solution to a problem requires brainstorming, and I feel like there isn't enough example of that online, of people just thinking without knowing, asking to explore, to have um, this opportunity to try to find something, not necessarily having an answers from the get-go. I think this is something that in our environment we're seeing that it's super necessary, and it's so necessary that people started saying it and naming that necessity out loud, like Ben Shapiro did in his Amphist. And I see more and more creators and people who come from maybe more moved from professionalism to YouTube sphere. They name the need to, hey, at some point we need to understand that it's not all just debate of you have your solution, I have mine. Sometimes we don't have a solution and we need to figure out what to do. And that kind of conversation has to be done somewhere, somehow. And it's not being taught anymore. And I think this is when I brought up this subject and I said, like, what happens when Islam infiltrates? One of the things that you can tell by that Islam had infiltrated and changes the way the West is operating is because there is no space for finding a solution anymore. That doesn't exist. It just...
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on once again. Was a pleasant surprise. So thank you. So I have those notes. We can go through those in a little bit because I think those will provide a description of the problem and some action points that people can take. Don't forget, on the one hand, your enemy is trying to suppress conversation. So you have censorship, you have shaming. They're trying to prevent you from actually talking about the problem. So you can't find others that will inspire you. You don't feel like you're part of a group. They're trying to isolate you. You can't talk about it. You'll get arrested. You'll be accused of being an Islamophobe. You might lose your job. You'll end up on the nightly news and you'll be shamed. That's one issue. Two, they're trying to suppress accurate information about the problem. So if you cannot describe the problem, you can't deal with it. And this, though, I think is no longer that effective. People are starting to talk about Islam. 5 years ago, when I started talking about the Sharia on YouTube, I was a weird guy talking about what? Now, everyone is talking about Sharia. They're seeing it as a distinct thing from the Quran, from the Hadiths. They're talking about Islamic law. And you see people like Andrew Gold, you're seeing Winston Marshall now talking openly about the problem. Last night, I have a monthly show on my channel called Is the UK OK? And we opened with a funny joke. One of my subs mentioned, is the UK KO? And they were joking about it. The UK does seem to be KO under Islam. But there's an awakening. There's a patriotic awakening. There is people are pushing back and saying, hey, we are Brits. We are not ashamed of our legacy. We're not ashamed of our history. We're not ashamed of our heritage. This is our country. They're causing the very fact they've been trying to suppress, and people are seeing it. I think it's in their face. It's been too much in our faces, and people are starting to wake up. I'm feeling very optimistic. Despite the issues, I'm optimistic.
So yeah, people are. So what we did, like as early birds, right? First is the awareness. So you have those people who do it first, and of course never get the actual clout that comes with doing something that's popular, because it wasn't popular. But then but I'm just being a bit teasing. But the thing is that now that we're the early birds like us, right? What I feel is stating the obvious, where now everybody is saying, well, Sharia is bad. Yeah, you can expand on how bad that is. You can go into details. But I do feel like now we need to move to the next phase, which is changing people's from, okay, they got the information, to now what?
Yeah, there's someone interesting in the chat. I shouldn't get distracted by the chat, but I'm being called a
Don't
liar.
look at the chat.
Was saying that I was talking about the Sharia 5 years ago. I don't know that there's any other channel that has gone through all of the Sharia manuals on YouTube the way that I have.
No, you're the
Yeah.
most. I just write
Yeah.
on yours. I'll just write on you. I take your credit and claim as if
Yeah.
it was my own.
No. And if there is someone that has, then just please list the names of the channels that have gone through all of the Sharia manuals in detail for years. Just list the names, please. That'll be great. Okay, yeah, I wonder, Charlotte. So, look, the UK has a problem. For instance, this is maybe our test case, the canary in the coal mine. But let me mention a couple of things. I can't take all the credit here, but I will mention that I've made a contribution, and others I know, like Osama Daktok, they've all made a contribution. The fact that we are speaking up makes a real contribution. And you, as a listener, in your circle, when you speak about Islam, when you talk about Islam, you are showing other people, even if they're too afraid, that yes, we can talk about it. It's okay. They're not being forced into silence because they want silence. So don't give them that. Inspire others. Stand up. Have courage. Right. But also, they're trying to create a purity. They're trying to create a myth of purity. But when you start talking about the issues, then you break that spell. You break that false purity idea. And then people realize, hold on, that there's a problem here. So you are snapping them out of the spell, out of the hypnotic spell they're trying to create. The UK is a test case, but back to my point earlier. Some years ago, I was asked by a group to write a couple of documents doing some research on the Muslim Brotherhood, which I did. I traced some of their financial activities, their front organizations, how they hide behind front groups and behind seemingly innocuous, safe little groups at universities and things. One of those documents, I had to do a summary, like an executive analysis for a simplified analysis of how they operate in terms of their doctrine, how they apply their doctrine, what the threat is. And this document was actually part of a parcel that was given to, at that time, the senator from Texas. I keep forgetting his name. Anyway, he's a very well-known senator from Texas. And the aim was to get the Muslim Brotherhood banned in the US. Now, you know that like a month and a half ago, the Muslim Brotherhood was banned in Texas. Now, it's taken 4 or 5 years for this advocacy, for this lobbying to finally take hold, but it has happened. And now it's being banned the Muslim Brotherhood is being banned in Florida. And President Trump has said he's going to be banning the Muslim Brotherhood in the US, which means he's going to go after the financial networks. He's going to start shutting them down. They're now a terrorist organization. So the little bit that you do can have a great effect, and you're changing public sentiment. So I think this is very, very important.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yes, Ted Cruz. Thank you.
With Ted Cruz? Yeah, Ted Cruz is working hard on it, but I don't want to talk about the situation. I don't know if it's if it's productive at all to talk about the political situation where, I'm sorry, but like the situation does not seem to be very optimistic in countries like the USA and Britain. With all due respect to Nigel Farage is completely a fraud. Like he's obviously a fraud. And when it comes to American politics, it's you have people with good intentions like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio who are not always as informed as you would expect. But
look, I know, like Sebastian Gorka, I question his knowledge, I question his statements. Even Tucker Carlson, he's a little bit of a strange one. I mean, I've seen this man flip, but then once he started his own network, apparently he got a lot of funding from Qatar, at least so I've seen in some sources. So that could also explain his change in loyalty. And also, like Candace Owens, she's gone off the deep end, as we see. But
she went completely. The thing that scares me about Candace Owens, and people say, oh, she's not that dangerous. She is a person that should be institutionalized online, and people are pretending it's normal. It means that insanity had become tolerable.
No, she's certainly gone off the deep end. But look, things are happening in the background. I don't think we necessarily see everything. Diplomacy is a very strange thing. You've got to play nice with people that you would like to stab in the back, but you've got to, remember someone said, diplomacy is the art of saying nice doggy while you look for a rock. So
Where in diplomacy do you have optimism? Because I talk to people in Advance UK. I talk to people that work with the Trump government or with our government, and I know some people who can also have some connections to the Norwegian government. Am I optimistic?
look,
No.
I think they're all infiltrated. I don't think we can claim there's no infiltration because they're everywhere. The Muslims have infiltrated with their oil money. They're everywhere, but this doesn't mean they've won. Certainly not yet.
Oh no, it doesn't mean they won, but it means that they have a rule book. They have a strategy that they had followed for
No, granted, but
millennia that works. They had
but it's not
flipped
that
so
we're
many
weak.
countries.
Yeah, true, but it's not that we're weak or incapable. It's that we've done nothing. There's a
Well,
difference.
that makes us weak and incapable, which it's semantics. I don't want to fight over that
No, but
definition of.
once we do start, no, I am. Someone's asking, Swearimji's asking, am I a lesbian? Yes, I am a lesbian. I love women. Thank you. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yes, please. I want to take a moment to just highlight this comment. And thank you, everybody who's sending super chats. I'll go through them in the right moment. But I don't think Lloyd gets enough credit. Honestly, ladies and gents, the amount of work he has done for us. Lloyd, you appreciate you, brother, 100%. And I also want to say there are layers in the way the mechanism works. There are people who do deep dive. So I put you on the first category.
Well,
so you do the meaning, the search for meaning, deep dive, right? And then a person like me can take your work and make it an architecture, which I do more like an architect work. And then you have the people who come and take my work, right? So yours is way too complex, right? And too much of a deep dive. I already mapped out an architecture. Then they take the architecture and turn it into emotional, easy to digest slogans and messaging that become popular. So what happens is, which is, I want to say that I've made a video talking about why the academia turned so bitter from the get-go. This mechanism is one of the reasons why the academia, people like us who technically have the most power to ruin societies, get the least credit, right? Who gets the credit? The emotional translators, the people who take my work, the people that architect, translate it to a level where, okay, now I understand the system. And then you have the emotional translators. The emotional translators get all the credit. And then people like me, and then lastly, people like you. But ironically enough, it could not have been done if it weren't, right? So the most credit goes to the person who did the most work in a society that is just, right? So that you are supposed to be getting the most of the credit.
You know what? We do this because we have to. The person who sees the problem has to deal with the problem, and we all contribute to this. There's no one of us that has solved the problem, but all of us. I have a friend who wrote a book on Islam, on the Muslim Brotherhood, who personally got to hand it to President Trump at an event. Right? I know another guy who had a friend hand his book to President Trump, right? And we don't know if he read it, but maybe he gave it to an aide who read it, and maybe this has shaped his policy, right? I know that the stuff that I went to Ted Cruz's office, I don't know that he's necessarily read it, but and we are talking about it. Now, remember, this enters the zeitgeist. People think you need to have 90% penetration. They've got billions of dollars. They influence the news. However, if you can just influence 8 to 10% of the people around you, you don't have to influence the world. Just 8 to 10% of the people around you, if you can talk to them and get them to understand, that knowledge becomes mainstream. Just a few people. So if you talk to your soccer club, your chess club, you talk to the people you walk the dog with, just talk to people around you, influence just a few people, that public sentiment turns into hard attitude that shapes government policy, that shapes the media. So
you know how I know I shaped those things? Because they quoted my exact framing.
Wow, nice. Nice. Nice.
But here's
Can
the
I share my
thing,
screen? I want to show something, if that's
yeah,
okay.
of course, of course.
I'm just going to share this. There it is. It'll take a moment to. Oh, am I sharing my screen? Everyone can see it?
Here, I'm going to add to stage. Let me just make this
great.
pretty.
Okay, there it is. So you mentioned that we don't talk about it, but notice here this is a talk that I gave 4 years ago. I've done it before that, but I gave it 4 years ago in 2021, and I did it prior to that, and I think I've done it since as well. But this is the Arab lobby. People speak of the Israeli lobby, etc., but the Arab lobby has no visible public HQ like AIPAC. AIPAC is not a government organization. It's actually funded by regular people who happen to like Israel. So me, some random guy down the street, the cashier at the grocery store. These are people who give public funds. These are not governments. These are people who give public funds in support of Israel because they like Israelis. They like Israel. Muslims are not popular. Islam is not liked. Therefore, they have to hide in the shadows because no one likes them, right? Now, they operate by stealth. They're barely known to the public. They're not discussed. So, for instance, James Zogby from the polling company wrote in 1982, there is no Arab lobby, right? The Paul University political science professor Khalil Marar, he contacted Arab American organizations for interviews, for research on the Arab lobby. He was told there is no Arab lobby in Washington, D.C. Yet, oddly, the Arab lobby is older than the Israeli lobby. The Arab National League of America was founded in the 1930s, before Israel even existed. And in 1951, King Saud of Saudi Arabia asked US officials to finance a pro-Arab lobby to counter the pro-Israel lobby, which the CIA obliged him in doing.
Yeah. But because I have worked with emotional translators, I can tell you that this whole thing is not interesting.
No, granted.
For the public.
Yeah,
I'll tell you.
But,
I'll tell you why. Because people don't operate. They operate emotionally, so they react to something that triggers them emotionally. Right now, like, why do Jews get all the rage all the time? Because emotionally, right? You infiltrate the society, make it go to the drain, and once things go to the drain, people are like, and then you create a culture that is anti-Jewish culture. And once your culture is anti-Jewish culture, and here's what I say, you know how you said there is the thing that is happening right now, right? Why we have this conversation, I wanted a line of people thinking, is because of censorship. Censorship is by nature anti-Jewish culture. Once you get censorship, you're gonna get people chasing Jews, because Jews cannot keep their mouth shut culturally. I'm not joking. It's true. Culturally, Jews just say what they think and argue, and they cannot not react. It's like culturally embedded. So once you have a censorship culture, that's it for the Jews. The Jews are done.
Right. However, to add some perspective, while popular opinion can be swayed by emotions, you've got policymakers and they work on data points. These lobbying companies, now they're trying to create what's called a purity. They want to create a myth of something perfect. It's like, think of a bath of white milk. Think of a bucket of pure white milk, just perfectly pure white. And you come along with a fact. You come along with an answer, a reply to people when they bring their propaganda talking point, and you give them these facts. This is like a dot of black ink that you suddenly drop into that white, perfectly white milk. And you know what? All they can see is that black dot. You've broken the spell of perfection. So your job is to just keep dropping little drops of black ink.
But you know that it's not satisfying for the soul to see that black dot. And that black dot is usually
and it drives
Jews and Jewish adjacent people.
But it drives
like people like you are also the same. It's like there is no difference between us in the amount of persecution we're gonna get.
That's a normal Tuesday. I mean, good grief.
And you're like, and you go and you check mark all the DEI requirements. And yet we're equal.
So while we're here, let me tell a quick joke. A professor walks into a university lecture hall and he says, who of you admit to believing in ghosts? And like a number of people raised their hands. They said they believe in ghosts. They believe in ghosts, right? So the professor says, who of you has seen a ghost? And like fewer people raise their hand and they say, I have seen a ghost. And then he says, has anyone had slept with a ghost? And one Pakistani guy in the back of the room raises his hand, and the professor says, that's incredible. You've slept with a ghost? And the Pakistani says, oh, sorry, I thought you said goat.
I love that.
So, yeah, sorry, I was just, I'm sure I had a point to make there. So anyway, but let me talk about something else. There's something I want to show here, okay? When you look at, just to go back to, because sometimes hard facts push back on these people's claims. Like this is just one thing, and then I'll go to the talk that we have. People talk about lobbying money, right? If you look at, for instance, look at the top 10 foreign principals by spending 2017 to 2018, right? Does Israel feature here? No. Look at all of this money. South Korea was the big spender in that year. Not Israel, not the Jews, South Korea, right? Then you have all of these tiny governments. Qatar, once you add all this together, because it's 21 countries plus Palestine, you ask yourself, well, once you start multiplying this, that line stretches way off to the right. Okay. Now you have a look here. Let's go to a couple of other figures that I want to get to. Here, let me go here. For instance, this is funding, Foreign Agents Registration Act funding, top 10 countries to 2019. Okay. Israel, 99 million in that year. Okay. But look at Saudi Arabia and UAE, that's 101 million, and that excludes China and the Marshall Islands, no one knows why, Ireland and so on, okay? But when you continue, you look at here, there's additional funding, 73 million from Saudi, right? 66 million from Israel. And then once you start to get into the numbers, once you dig deeper, you'll find that, I'll give you these numbers. In total lobbying money, just into universities, for instance, right? The top 5 funders of Western universities, where we're seeing all of these pro-Palestine marches, spend 42.08 times more money than Israel, right? So the Muslim, just the top 5 spenders who spend money on university lobbying, spend 42 times more. Israel spends its money in universities on typically computer science or farming technology, bioscience, right? Have a look at this. What the Saudis have, what the Muslims have spent here, okay? Muslim nations, 100 million in that year, 101 million just to George Washington University alone. Israel, 507,000. These people have spent, I mean, this is significantly more. 200, what's it? I'm not a math Asian, but how many times does 50 go into, 100 million, 500,000? So you're looking at 200 times more money just in one university. So then once you follow the money, follow the funds, it doesn't add up. The Muslims and the Chinese are outspending everybody. The amount of money that Qatar alone, Israel is down here. Look at Qatar alone on this graph.
Yeah,
it's insane. So
I also wanna add something. So what I'm doing right now, like I sent you the catalyst, right? I sent you the questions. So I've delved into researching operating systems of humans, so cognitive operating systems. So what made me realize that exists is the fact that when you have a different questioning style, you also have like a different ways of listing axioms and how to operate on them. So once I was like, okay, you have different operations on axioms depending on your culture, then that means you have different operating systems in general, completely. And what I found is that China studies cognitive operating systems. They have it as think tanks. They have it like they invest money to dissect like cultural like operating systems. The biggest thing that they're trying to crack is the Jewish innovation. Because when I delve into that research, what came up, and maybe I'm still like fact checking everything, is that they invest heavily. They believe that the biggest drive for the American economic success is the Jewish layer, the Jewish operating system layer, which is like driving a lot. So what they're trying to do right? What they figured out, right, in their minds is that you don't actually need to be a democracy. For them, it's like how necessary is it? Like they have a little bit of like an argumentation of how much the American ecosystem being democratic is, how important it is. So it's between that being 50% or 80% of the difference. And what they had thought is like, okay, you take the Jews, right, as a component because they have a very unique operating system that they're running. And then they are relatively speaking, they are a modular cognitive system, like they're modular. And they're like, okay, so how do we move that modular cognitive system and plug in that system into our Chinese pipelines? Because those cultures you cannot have the two operating systems working together. One is good for scaling and manufacturing, the other is for innovation. And they do it they clash in some basic things, right? Once you get one, once you get an innovative operation system, then you wouldn't be interested in scaling,
these cultures are more monolithic. They're communist. In other words, they're communal. They're more monolithic. And they would conform to what is called, they're both totalitarian and totalist. Totalitarian means top-down control through force, through political control and guns. But also they are totalist in that they have an enforced conformity horizontally through society. Through psychological means they create, whereas Western culture, at least.
Wait, Lloyd, before you delve into Western, because this is like, I want, if it's okay if I finish up the layout, because there is something important I want to say, right? If it wasn't for the Chinese manufacturing style, which is common throughout East Asia, and no matter what country you take, they're all very strong on hierarchy, right? They hide it in different ways, like Japan hides it better than China does, but they're all like that. In a sense, right? They're all like very, and what happens is that they can manufacture and scale. But what if you remove that percentage of the population that can do that, it means that you wouldn't have a manufacturing scaling hub. So that is also a risk to take, because ironically, China has a very unique, they have this problem where they are like a bottleneck in the world economy. But the reason is because their culture means that they can do things that no other nation can, including some silica processing and things like that. So because like other people just wouldn't confirm or be able to scale at that. So it's also like it's a sensitive game to play. But there is one OS system, cognitive OS operation system, that is in no way, shape, or form productive, useful, or contributes to society. Guess which one that is?
Islamic?
Yes. Easy.
Yeah, no.
Nothing. Zero contribution. Zero. Absolutely nothing. So the Chinese strong hierarchy helps them scale and manufacture. The Muslim can scale and kill everything. They are
Muslims take from others. They don't produce.
Exactly.
They're parasitic. I mean, even if you look at the Ottoman Empire, what did they produce? Nothing. They subsisted on slavery and forcing others through slave labor to produce. And that's also what China does. China has a very small, gifted population, which they encourage, but you have to then show loyalty to the party, which means that also you've got to close your mind to certain things. They would not manage if they were not sending their people to Western universities, then bringing them back with stolen ideas, stolen technology. But also they have slave labor, so they can undercut production costs.
But
and
I
they're
think,
not organically like that either.
It's not just China that has slave labor, okay? There are a lot of ways to get slave labor, and some other Western countries just don't do it in-house. That's still slave labor. Like, I'm sorry, like the French in Africa, still slave labor, right? Like it's not slave labor.
Yeah, but then also those people
So
wouldn't
it's just
have
it's just a
any
moment of
way.
honesty. I don't think it's a good
No,
thing.
but
We
those
should
people also
go
wouldn't have
fight
work
against it.
because Africa unfortunately bought the whole socialist snake oil.
Yeah,
Like
100.
most of the countries in Africa adopted socialism, and they've all suffered, and they wouldn't otherwise have an economy if the Westerners didn't go there and make some kind of sort of business that they could actually get some sort of money. They'd have literally nothing if it weren't for that. So there's other sides to that equation as well. I mean, sure, it might be morally questionable, but those
Right.
people would have nothing if it weren't for because
No,
of
no, no.
government failure. If
Yes, 100%, like 100%, like okay, so here's the thing, like the socialism thing is gonna fail on any operating system, right? It's
Mhm.
like it's correlated, but not necessarily like 100%. Like this, like I just wanna it's it's anyway. It's just I don't want to dive into that because I do want to take a moment and talk about Western operating system, which
Yeah.
is different than the Jewish one. It's different because this is one of the key things,
Well,
right?
I mean, this relationship,
So
look, within the Jewish context, obviously you've got a certain group that wants to maintain coherence. So they have very defined sort of in-group, out-group, and that's fine. But they both based on, at least were, on Aristotelian logic,
no,
non-contradictory logic, the trivium.
no.
Because
So this is part of the study I'm doing.
Mhm.
Jews run not a Greek logic system. They don't use a Greek logic system. They have their own, and it's biblical, right? So the Jewish logic system
It's
is already
still logic. It's still logic. It's still
it's
based
still
on.
logic, yes, but it's not based on the Aristotelian one. It's not accurate to say that because that would make an impression that Jews run the same operating system as Westerns, but they don't.
I mean, there might be differences, but logics
But
remain. The laws of logic remain the same: non-contradiction, law of identity,
right,
law of
right.
the middle.
Yes,
So
yes and no.
how
Yes
that
and
is
no. Yeah,
expressed within the culture will differ. But
so can I explain like the biggest difference? Like, okay, so the treatment of axioms is different, completely different. So let's say you present an axiom in a talk, in a Jewish reasoning, they accept axioms without questioning the axioms for to run the logical system first, and then they question the axioms. In a Greek system, you question the axioms first. It's different, and it makes a completely different reasoning pipeline. So it might, in the end of the day, the result could be looking as, okay, logic is logic, it's mathematical, I agree, but it's still very different. So, and because of that, what happens is that the West can build institutions, are very good at building institutions and architecture, right? And build like in structures. Jews are not. They're chaotic.
that's a little bit Middle Eastern. But notice, I mean, look,
Well, of course.
I think we should follow the one-state solution where you give the whole Middle East to Israel and they run it, right? Because they would make the traffic
But
lights work and
here's
the
the
train.
interesting thing. This is where I tell you, if you
Yeah.
want Israel to run the Middle East, you would have to import to Israel Western system building that is not native to the Israeli society. Israel is actually an anarchy that is hidden from, like it's not an obvious anarchy, but it's an anarchy.
But there's still enough
So
parallel with Western thinking for similarity. Whereas if you go to Saudi Arabia, I mean, that's alien to most people, right? When you see it from the perspective that I have, where you go to some certain places in Lebanon. I mean,
right.
I was in northern Iraq on assignment, and the first thing I was told when I got there, they said, "Do not look at the women; the men will beat you up." That's the first thing So you have these different cultures, and I mean, there's reasons why some cultures are dysfunctional, and there are parallels that make
Yeah.
some
But
cultures.
that's different because that's culture. And here's the fun part, right? Logically, it's Middle Eastern, and it's also similar to the way Jews
Yeah,
operate.
but culture.
Right. So
Everyone says that.
if you say
Everyone says that.
something to someone in Jewish culture, gonna get the entire community stoning you right away, but with words, right? Jews choose nonviolent stoning, but you get the stoning, and it's the same with Arab culture. It's so that's the like, this is why I say like OS systems is a very different
but
kind of,
there's also,
and
I think there's also,
and I can like explain the difference between the Jewish and the Arab one, if that's all right.
yeah, but if you go
And
to a meta level, if you go, they say that politics is downstream from culture, but they always forget the first part of that statement is that culture is downstream from religion. Now, if you look at the biblical God, he's a God of order, he's a God of logic. He respects logic and order. Whereas if you look at the
Right.
Muslim God, Allah is will, not reason. So
Exactly.
Allah he's nominalist, he's completely arbitrary. So there's no order. So therefore there's no predictability. So therefore if you look at, you can base science on a God of order, but you can't base it on a God that's nominalist, subjective, completely arbitrary. So those
okay. So
extremes are
now,
similar on the Western side.
can I challenge you? Now take the Jewish system, right? And instead of having it function like the Jewish system, where the set of axioms is based on research and it changes, so it's a changing set of axioms, right? So the way you argue is like you present an axiom and then people argue and then you get a irony and then you stop. That's Judaism. Now imagine that instead of having a flexible science-based set of axioms, the way Judaism runs it, you're gonna have a fixed state, fixed axioms that you can only operate. It doesn't matter if those axioms are true or false. You always operate on top of those axioms.
Yeah, but that's also part of being a closed culture that has to maintain
that's Islam.
maintain itself for millennia, right? So therefore you've got maybe overcompensation. You've got some calcification or stultification because of the social.
Right, but here's what I want to point out to, right? Within the given axioms, right? Muslims can exhibit an impressive amount of logic and reasoning and creativity.
If they're Western trained, yeah, sure.
No, but
if they're permitted to go there. I mean, if they're permitted.
Well, here's the thing, right?
Look, there's always.
Look, okay, so can I give you an example, right? Mm-hmm. You said that all the schools of thought, right, agreed on execution, right? Or like of apostates, and then they fight over what kind of, how does the execution should be looking like. You're gonna get no other, and you're not gonna get creativity higher than Muslims trying to think how to torture people.
Yeah, but the principle is then that's
but just the axiom is the execution, because this is the thing. If you look at it as a set in stone, they need to be killed. That's agreed. But then the implication layer, you're gonna see, and the argumentation layer, you're gonna see a lot of a surprising amount of creativity.
Yeah, but the form is there that the tire is round. They're just arguing about the color.
Exactly. Yes, yes, you got it. And that is why a Muslim operation system that is installed is fucked up, because they work on force. Here's the thing. They once you get this operating system, it means that you always look for a set of fixed axioms. So their minds cannot accept a set of non-fixed axioms. So once your mind is structured like that, right? That once that's your operating system, and why Islam is so problematic is because they can only switch between one axiom, set of axiom to another, usually by force, and a lot of force. But that means that they still operate, and there is no scientific achievement or anything that could be done once the strength of the initial axioms, right, of that set is running out, because you have outgrown that scope that they can generate. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but they're trapped within the Sharia because there are
exactly. So here's the thing in theory, because you can grab the Muslims, traumatize them to accept a new set of axioms, right? You can. Okay, we're Israeli. Okay, fine, we tried. Okay,
you know what? Let's actually.
You beat.
Let me go here. Since if I can mention something here, Now, this was I have this thing planned for us just as talking points and to make sense to the audience, right? I did this to make sense to the audience, and but let me just start at the end then, just quickly, and I'll come back to
Right.
this, right? Can we
Oh,
convince,
this is beautiful.
yeah,
Okay.
can we convince Muslims to embrace our values? Now, this is from part of a very long talk. A friend of mine sent it to me today. This is something for the future, but this is a very, very heavily edited, simplified set. But it's very hard to get Muslims to change. Okay, 10 points. Their daily life is saturated with tiny religious rituals, right? So the decision-making muscle is constantly spent on what does Islam say? Do I have to say salam, fa, step with my left foot, step with my right foot, do it with the left hand, do it with the right hand, do it with this nostril? There's so many rules that inhibit that, they're not focused on what's true. They're focused on performative behavior, right? Rituals and external behaviors. 2, they've invested years of prayer, fasting, memorization.
I also, can I add an expansion? That's also part of the axiomatic system, right?
Yep.
So rituals as well. So I just want to say that, like, for the
So this stops you from
definition.
thinking.
I
It
know
stops you
that
from
is
thinking.
like,
It takes your
yeah.
brain right out of thinking,
No,
out of logic,
right.
and boom, straight into performance
Well,
theater, right? Because you're doing performance theater for everyone
right.
around you to show them I'm a good Muslim. Look at my performance, right? Then, of course, they spend time on memorization, self-denial. So admitting that Islam is false is admitting your entire life was a waste.
Right, because
right?
your entire axiom system is collapsing, right?
Yes.
So they can, yes, but what I'm trying to say is that, let's say you manage to get their axiomatic system to collapse, then you end up being with an operating system that is limited to run on a set of axioms without ever, like, without any flexibility on that on that axiom list.
No, they're rigid, of course. They're rigid.
Yes.
But you see, these are not. Just pause a second.
That means that when it comes to real life,
let me finish the thought here, and let me get through these points.
Sorry. Yes, of course. Sorry.
These are not necessarily well considered. Think about this. These are not necessarily well considered positions. If you think of the word, atheism presupposes theism, so theism had to come first. Atheists are opposing atheism. You look at the term Protestant, that presupposes the existence of the Catholic Church. They are protesting those guys, right? They are anti. It's an anti-movement. Islam is not necessarily a set of well-considered axioms. Islam is a set of entrenched positions against something else.
Well,
so
that's
they're not
also
necessarily
you don't
they're
need
not
to have a
necessarily
positive
smartly
action.
designed systems. They are just whatever those guys are, we are not. They are heretics, we are not. They are infidel, we are not. They do this, we don't. So they've locked themselves in by being inflexible, by identifying themselves negatively, not positively, not responding to the environment, but working on a mythical set of ideas that's false. So you've got they've restricted themselves.
Don't you think it's still
Yeah, sure, but it's false. It's not based on logic. It's not.
Yes,
It's
but I never said that the axioms are not true.
Yeah, it's a myth. It's actually, would I even call it an axiom?
This is why, but here's the thing that I want to stress. Let's say the axioms that they adopt are true in some miraculous way, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They cannot do science because at some point the scientific research requires an expansion on an axiom list. They cannot.
No, but it goes against the theology again, and they can't do that. There comes a point.
Yeah, it goes against without the theological part, right? Let's say you remove the memory of Islam, remove it. You just get the raw operating system of a brain that is damaged by Islamic cognition hardwiring. Okay, you remove. They don't remember what Islam is. They don't know nothing. Okay, now you can install a new set of axioms to live by, right? New rituals, of course, their ability to get positive axioms, you're right, is entrenched. It means that you can only put in negative axioms. And
they can't change. Changing
exactly,
is very difficult.
And then if you do that, right, no matter what of set of axioms you can be creative enough to install, they gonna run, like, the scientific ability that these people would have with this operating system would exhaust itself in a couple of decades at most, and then they're going to go back into destructive patterns, as in those would all be interpreted under resentment.
Okay, not sure how that. Yeah, no, I'm not quite following there. But look, anyway,
Can
let
we
me go.
agree? Can we agree that the brain damage is irreversible?
In the current generation, yes, there are people that yeah, there's going to be obviously exceptions, but in this generation, you're dealing with zombies that can't be fixed. So you have to
Exactly.
wait for a new
But
generation.
here's
Yeah.
what I want to add up. When Islam
So
infiltrated the West, they created homegrown people who went through Western education system who are also zombies. They don't have the same axiomatic system as the Muslims, but notice that they are groupers.
these are all totalist. These systems fall under the banner of these are totalist systems that enforce behavior horizontally within the culture, not through police
Exactly.
or
But
military
that
or gun.
means that there is a generation that grew up with an operating system that was shaped by Islam. This is what it means that they infiltrated the universities. It means that we have a zombie generation that is homegrown, that also has a brain damage that cannot be fixed.
Yeah, of course. So
Okay.
you can't reason with people who
I
not developed
think that
reason.
this entire opening, this entire 45 minutes, brought us to the point where we both agree there is a structural operating system malfunction, regardless of the axioms installed in it, right now, that in a good amount of
These are
the
people that have
population.
been emotionally manipulated. They don't even know what thinking is. They don't even know how to think correctly. They're simply responding to slogans. They're responding
That
to
is
emotions.
operation system breakage, because they can
That's
only respond to slogans. That's the operation system breakage. Yeah,
that's
that's the
that's
thing,
totalism. That's a totalist system.
right?
So I just let me start at the beginning. Let's maybe talk about this and we can work through the problem, the infiltration, what is happening and how we can deal with it, at least on our level as individuals, right? So we see the danger, right? There's been infiltration. We know there's massive amounts of money flowing in, but the battle is against denial and drift on our own side. The enemy, you don't have $1 billion to counter them, but so you've got to think high concept, right? You don't have lots of money, but you've got to go high concept, right? So low tech, but high concept, right? You're dealing with a totalist structure. It is brittle, it is fragile, it believes in a purity. If you can constantly prick it with a little pin and say you're not pure, if you can put a drop of black ink in that bucket of milk every time, all they see is that black dot, and it psychologically it shatters them, it destroys them, it ruins the magical spell, right? Now there are 3 levels here: psychological, institutional, and national strategic. Now you can't change them; they're too invested. You've got to change your own side. You've got to talk to your people. You've got to insulate and inoculate your own people. You've got to give them the vaccine, right? So now you've got to go from recognizing danger. You've got to convince your people in policy-making positions that we were wrong. They have to admit they were wrong, right?
And we must start operating against the university, the university infrastructure that was created to change the operating system of the next generation in our
step by
countries.
step.
Now,
Universities are just one area. Universities are just one area,
of
right?
course,
So when you realize that Islam has infiltrated, and I think we've all come to that realization, there's mosques, there's NGOs, there's academia, there's military, there's even churches, priests, seminaries, right? Politics, right? The problem is that everyone then has to look at their failure, especially the people in policy positions. They have to look at their failure and go, I've sunk a lot of time and effort into ecumenical talks about, oh, Muslims are wonderful people, Islam's a religion of peace. They found out they're wrong, and it's very embarrassing for them to change course. They've sunk. There's too much risk to them, emotional, political, financial, etc. So it's very, very hard for them too. Okay, but
wait
let's say,
one
look, in
second.
the US,
I think this is important to say. So she's assuming non-plastic neurology. It's hard, but not impossible to undo it. I want to say something. We are at the point where you cannot afford to undo it. You just don't have the so why is it not as relevant to the conversation, right? So here's the assumption we make. There is an entire population where you cannot afford. You just cannot. You don't have the means. You don't have the capability. You don't have the amount of effort, the amount of it's just beyond reach. And then there is the population that hopefully, right, our own, that it can be minimized and some maybe reversed in some points, but maybe minimized. The damage could be minimized, and of course, once you can balance it by creating more like the black dots people, right? So, and that is just taking advantage of the fact that it's not a multi-generational um, operating system already, right? So one of the biggest problems with the Islamic world, which is it's multi-generational. Even in Turkey, on one hand, you have an Islamist, on the other hand, you have a socialist, and that's the dichotomy. Why? Because the operating system is fucked in Turkey, okay? Even though they were secular for so long. So just to understand, right? And that's the best case. And because with Arab countries, it's way worse than that. So it's very important to understand that at some point you cannot afford it anymore. So it's nice to live in La La Land and in delusions, but there is reality on the ground. So there are enemies that are already are operating in a certain operating system that is destructive by nature, unproductive, and is your enemy. That is a fact. You can do whatever it takes to minimize and fight against it in your own population, but you also have to understand that there is a population where it's already there for millennia, which means that your entire thinking needs to accept it. And it's tragic because the implications are horrible and horrifying. And I will spell it out to you, but not now because we have not finished laying down the axioms. So thank you. All right, please. Sorry.
Right. Now, to recognize the problem is not enough, right? The hardest step is to admit it's an emotional step. You have to take an emotional step here. We allowed this. We were naive. All of our prior assumptions were wrong. So you now have to rewire your whole brain. There's a shame aspect.
One
It's very difficult. Yeah.
Shana, UAE is not changing. It's a delusion. It's only some parts, and the way they do it is by they have enough oil money to basically import all the OS systems that they need from abroad. Nothing is in-house. It's not changing. It's impossible.
They're suppressing the Sharia because they realize that having Western thinking makes them financially and socially much more successful. That opens them to opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise. However, let's say the sheikh there dies tomorrow and his son is a hardliner and his son takes over. All of that change, boom, is undone in 20 minutes. So that could change on a dime. So now, of course, the emotional step is we allowed this, we were naive, our prior assumptions were wrong. You can't always talk to people at that emotional stage. You may have to shame them or force it somehow, right? But we need to come to that honesty. You need the honesty, right? Then there are going to be 3 predictable reactions among the leadership, right? They'll minimize. It's not that bad. It's just a few extremists. I mean, look at the UK government, look at Starmer or whatever. Of course, everyone on the right wing who's got pale skin is bad, but of course it's just a few bad apples. And oh my, look at all these migrants that are, SAing all of these young girls. Yeah, you know what we need to do? We need to send the 12-year-old boys, white boys at school to misogyny training. It's retarded, but there you go, right? They will try to diffuse the problem, to make it everyone's the same. So all ideologies have extremists. Let's not single Islam out. But that's a refusal to look at concrete ideology, what is written on the page. So that is immediately trying to distance yourself, to backpedal. But there's going to be fear attached to that. There's going to be ignorance attached to that. And there's going to be bribes attached to all of this, right? They'll try to proceduralize. Let's set up a committee. Let's write some guidelines. And this is simply just creating delay as a protection, so that hopefully you'll forget. Hopefully they can just sweep it under the carpet. Hopefully they can then make changes that are not going to actually make any changes, or they can institute additional things to further their agenda. So these are areas, but you will see these are consistent activities that leadership will take. Now, the first task for you, and this is your homework, is to name the error plainly. Don't use euphemisms. Stop using the word Islamism, please. I beg of you. It's Islam. It's called Islam. Muslims have no idea what Islamism is. They're Muslims, they follow Islam, right? Yeah. Now, so you have to say, look, we treated Islam as just a religion instead of as a political, legal, civilizational system. It's a theocracy. It is never just a religion. It's a theocracy. It's a political legal system with its own code of law called the Sharia. Right? So use the terms, make these terms popular, use them in your own daily speech, use them on social media, make sure that your friends learn these things, see these things, right? Because the media is not going to help you here. Very few. GB News might be the only one that's doing it. Who knows, right? So, of course, we outsourced our risk assessment to interfaith talking points. Try to find commonality. Let's look at the nice side. Now, look, I mean, sorry if I to go here, but if you look at Stalin, he had some wonderful points. He was quirky, he was funny, he had a great sense of humor. If you look at Mr. Mustache Man, he loved dogs. He was a vegetarian. He was a decent.
No, but he tortured dogs behind the scenes. That's the
Really? Okay, didn't know that. So, but anyway, but think he also did nice things. He built wonderful roads. He produced great industry, and also he created, for instance, the 5-day working week with time off and all of that stuff. All the stuff that we love today about our working environments. The guy did some good things. You know what? That is by no means any kind of excuse for the evil that he did. Once you idolize this, you're going to try to ignore the bad, because these are part and parcel. So no, right? And instead of doing risk assessment, instead of looking at their playbook, which is the Sharia, instead of doing proper threat assessment, you try to go to feelings. But let's all be nice to each other, right? And then the psychological transition, right? You have to go with tolerance and fear, because we've got too much tolerance. And our politicians are afraid, but our academics are also negligent. Academics are not calling it. They know. The academics know. The politicians know. I have a friend who's a diplomat at the EU, an acquaintance rather. He tells me publicly, these people will say, Islam is wonderful, Muslims are wonderful, we should all get along. And he says, but you talk to them privately, at least the ones who aren't Muslim and the ones who aren't communists. And he says there's too many of those in the EU as well. But he says, behind the scenes, people are terrified. They won't say it publicly, but they'll say there's good. My friend has said to me, and he asked me, because of my background, he asked me, what do you think is going to happen in the next 5 years? And I said, I think civil war. And he said, everyone in the EU thinks the very same.
Yeah.
So, right. So now, key point, Western institutions are paralyzed by two fears, right? The fear of looking Islamophobic and the fear of actual violence. And Muslims are exploiting both. Now, this word, Islamist, please never use that word ever. Okay, these are Muslims. There's no separate political Islam. There is just Islam.
I want to say something for the record, okay? So, because it's important, not because I'm a good person who thinks that there are Muslims that we shouldn't paint everybody in the same brush. No. Here's why I'm going to say the next statement. The next statement I'm going to say is because knowing this fact is important for infiltration and to seeding people that would ruin them from the inside, right? And give you locations of those who need to be dealt with. All right. Here is the secret. Okay. Like operating systems, there is one quirkiness to them. It's also genetic. So from time to time, rarely, you're gonna get a person that they don't fit the operating system of their environment genetically from birth. When by the time they're 1.5 years old, they already broke the system because they asked too many questions, too curious, have explored, right? They found ways to train the operating system that goes against the culture they grew up in creative way that is unpredictable. These people would hate the society they're in with passion. They'll be your great allies. Never close yourself to the possibility that the person in front of you was born genetically and enforced an operating system before the official line of culturalization had done its effect. Thank you.
There's always an exception. However, another point we should make, you mentioned genetically, up to 70-90% of Muslims in various Muslim countries are inbred. You're looking at cousin marriages, first cousins, which means that over time, this creates genetic damage. When I was working with pilots, when we were working on airborne vision systems, airborne detection systems, the pilots, let's take Saudi Arabia as the example, they had vision problems because generations of inbreeding causes biological genetic damage, which means you've got cognitive defects and you've got other defects. So they couldn't see properly. So therefore, they outsource a lot of their military stuff to foreigners, right? Well, they still have their people in charge, but they also have American, Canadian, British, whatever, German advisors that fly the choppers and do the things. These guys could see. We could see now. We gave them an upgraded system where they could see power lines at very long distances, because these guys weren't able to see it on the screen on the existing system. So they had to upgrade the tech. Cost them millions of dollars, which is great for us at the time. But so you're going to have people who are cognitively damaged. The average IQ within those people, you're looking at maybe an IQ of 70, 80, which is not sufficient to maintain or build any kind of technological civilization.
Right.
That's another
So
reason.
the first step to encourage inner collapse without you dirtying your hands too much is to close the tap. So those countries are fed from the outside. They drink water that given outside. They have a military protection from the outside when it comes to countries. Also inside communities, you close the tap. No more benefits. Not giving them any subsidiaries. Right? You do that. You're gonna let them kill themselves. This is the first step.
Yeah, I mean, well, we fed China. Look what happened, and the same with Russia. So yeah, you got to turn off the money supply.
Yeah.
Don't feed the dragon. Yeah. So now these infiltrators rely on 4 levers that they use, or levers.
And I want to add, for those who are like, oh, so what you do is you move from hidden aid that is given to them from fear of them going crazy to purely transactional. So they generate value, you purchase. That's fine. They don't, close and tap. Super important.
Mm-hmm.
Just for those who don't understand what it means. Like, yeah, please.
Yeah. Yes. So now guilt. You're prejudiced if you question us. So they use shame and guilt against you. It's time you turn it around the other way, right? Or you say, I don't care anymore. Yes, I'm racist, whatever. I don't care anymore. Call me what you like. You just shrug it off and just move on. It's like you stop caring, because that's an emotional stranglehold. 2, threats. There will be anger on the street if the red lines are crossed. Think about the UK. It's like, yeah, if you don't give us these kids back, if you arrest these men, if you publish that video, there's going to be violence on the street. Politicians are terrified. They want peace. They're terrified. Confusion. Islam is really complex. You don't understand.
Why?
What?
Guess who is the first ones on the roster?
Sorry, explain. I'm not following.
The first ones to go. Let's say there is violence and anger.
They're going to attack the Jews, you mean?
No, the politicians.
Oh, of course. But that's not.
I just want to say, like, they need to self-preserve as well, and they're in the front lines.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
Well, it means that you have a conflict of interest between the general population and the politicians.
Yeah, no, true. No, the politicians, no, look, they will be replaced, certainly. I mean, because obviously they lost control, and people are going to.
No, and I don't mean they necessarily going to be replaced in a nice way.
And then, of course, you have all. No, you're right. But they are threatened.
So if they are the first ones, you'd understand why they're going to operate out of much more fear than the general operation. It's a general population, but the difference is, first of all, like 2 things. They probably have higher IQs than the average population, and they have more access to information than. I know you are there, but the general population is stupid. Okay, so like I know they're also stupid, but it's like a stupid plus 1. Okay, fine. Like let's. And the second thing, they have like a more. They have the mapping of the reality, so they know, but their fear factor, right? So one sector you have lack of understanding, but less fear factor in general, because if they knew what's going to come, they're going to act. And then you have the other sector where the moment, like, because they're the first to go, right? The fear factor is so much higher. They want to hide that as much as possible.
Yeah.
So it's very important to understand the conflict of interests, because people do have self-preservation instincts,
Granted.
and I think it's unfair to expect politicians to not have a self-preservation instinct. They're on the front lines, but we must understand that they are in the front lines. So once you understand that, the position of who's the position politicians are really at, you would understand their limitations. And once you understand their limitations, you can work through them or bypass it.
Right. Now, a last point that I also want to raise something. You have co-opted elites, from priests to politicians, of course, who are acting in self-preservation. You've got security experts who are making too much money. You've got media personalities, the whole lot. They've infiltrated all of these areas of our culture for their own gain, right? Oh, just a point I want to make. Someone mentioned something that came up yesterday, but something to point out. I will say, though, you spoke about optimism. Why I feel there's optimism. And this, again, I thank someone that is in the chat now, but look at that blockade of Venezuela. When I mentioned that story, the oil blockade of Venezuela, people think it's just about Venezuela, about just stopping them from getting oil revenues and then cutting off, because the government there, even under the Biden regime, was declared a narco state, that the narco terrorists, the narcos had actually taken over the country, and they had become president and governor.
I have a feeling for where you're going to go with that.
Yeah, well, just a small point.
So pause when you get to the point for a second, because I want to say something about my high school education system that has to do with.
Okay, now, few people realize that there's a lot of deep state work that is funded through drug money, right? You do have intelligence agencies that staffed by very bad people with very bad intentions, with globalist intentions, etc. And they fund their activities through black operations, drug money through Afghanistan, through Vietnam, the triangle up there, and so on. And this money gets funneled through Venezuela. It's clean and funneled out, right? So if Trump cuts off their funding, if he cuts that off, and this is why everyone's panicking, the problem is that the deep state, all the George Soroses and all the other people in the world, this is the way they funnel money. And if he cuts that off, you know what they did with what's it, USAID? What Elon Musk did with USAID, and suddenly all of the all of the activities started to die because the spigot got cut off, the money got cut off because USAID cut their funding, their secret funding. The very same thing's happening with Venezuela. Cut off Venezuela's oil money, and not just oil money, their drug money, cut off their money supply, and suddenly all of these organizations that are doing funny business, their money dries up as well. Trump is cutting off the money supply to these organizations, to these funny leftist organizations, all of these communist movements, the Muslim Brotherhood, you name it. They're all funneling money through Venezuela and other countries around that there. So this is what he's doing. Don't just look on the surface. There's a lot happening below the surface. So
my high school story time. So when we were in high school, right, there is a lot of anti-drugs campaign. For when I was a youth, at least, right? I don't know what's going on now, but when I was younger, you know how they ran the anti-drugs campaign? They brought up all the receipts of the drug money circulation, and basically what they had installed in our minds with scare videos is that every time you take a joint, you smoke a joint or anything, right, you fund terrorism. That's how it's like they did this shortcut. Yes. And so it's been like the main anti-drug use campaign was drugs equal terrorism. You fund terrorism, you fund and it's very effective when there is intifada outside. It's like, oh, you smoked some? Well, the bus exploded.
Oh, but it is one of the ways that they bypass the banking system. So yeah, so you asked me to talk about the transition, where we are now, and this requires us to make very deliberate, very conscious decisions, right? We need to accept a reputational cost and short-term unrest rather than drift into long-term capture, because that's where we're headed. So the question is not, is there infiltration? Because yes, there is. Do we fear moral slander? You're a racist, you're a bigot, you're an Islamophobe, more than we fear.
Let's be honest, it's also affecting our ability to make money. It's affecting everything.
Yeah, but we have to take the hit because
exactly. But when you say that, reducing it to moral slander is half truth.
Yeah.
Do we fear
we need short-term pain to prevent civilizational suicide, because long-term we are losing our civilization. And this is an existential issue. And this is why they need to censor and prevent you from knowing, because this will prevent your survival instinct from kicking in. And once people feel the threat, and we do, they know they can't stop the dominoes from falling, because the public, once they rise up, they can't stop it. Now, the institutional response, right? So you have captured structures. They've been infiltrated. So we've got to look at how do captured structures behave. So once infiltration is real, your own institutions are part of the problem. Look at the Canadian government. They're the enemy of the people. Look at the UK government. They are the enemy of the people. We know this, right? Yeah. So you can expect the following from HR
and here's legal. One of the biggest things, right? So I'm talking to professors from different places, right? If they build a new structure, right, they have the they don't have the credentials of an existing university, right? So let's say a bunch of professors are like, okay, we need change. Then, okay, let's create a new one. You don't have the same reputation and credential history of something that is older. And I think this is one of the main things that are that thing. And we need as part of the war should be accepting switching from accept new institutions also, right? So that's part of it.
No, we're going to have to get rid of a few old ones that just are not fit for purpose.
Not necessarily get rid, but it's like you also need to be open to new institutional credential, and you need to build prestige, and that's like a communal effort, right? So when somebody says to you, right? So here's a way you can add prestige as a communal effort in a rather simple way. Let's say somebody goes to you and says, "Hey, I did a course with," and then you can ask them instead of, "Oh, is this new, or is this place, do they teach inquiry properly," right? You can ask something that is a bit different than the usual, "Oh, I recognize name brand," to just check if that is something that is good, and then your reaction needs to be proportionate to how civilizationally productive the institutional thing is, the whatever thing they have went through is. It's a little bit more work, right? It's a bit more questions. It's a bit more back and forth, but I think this is the closest, the fastest shortcut I can think in a way to try to bypass that prestige problem.
Right. Well, I mean, that keeps you from doing something because there's a cost. There's a social cost.
Exactly. So we cannot just expect pain. We have to also have reward systems, alternative reward systems, right? So if so everybody who's listening, right? So whenever somebody says, I went to university, and then it's something that you don't recognize or anything, instead of thinking about okay, that's not prestigious because I don't recognize the brand name, ask a couple of questions to understand whether the functionality of the institution is good, and then react as if you heard somebody, if that person tells you and you can pick up that institution is functional, your reaction should be as if they told you they're getting a PhD in Yale or Harvard to build a prestige.
Right. No, that's motivation. So that's just that right. Can fall into motivation.
I'm just saying that so people would understand, right? So what we're doing here is part of the solution. These kind of conversations are important so people could hopefully break it down and think, okay, how can I create an alternative reward system to something that, right? Because brand name doesn't work anymore. So something needs to come and replace it. And once you, make it democratic and everybody can take this pattern of thinking and try to apply it wherever they can, and then send it through, right? And broadcast it in a very specific domain of, hey, somebody comes to you from university, ask that. They build a protocol, simple one, and broadcast it. It's not something that we can do because we are too much of a high level people, right? But then people who watch us, who read our materials, can break it down to the digestible clicks and bits and right. broadcast it. In a repeating way.
This is why I've got at least notes here everyone can just look at and read or screen capture and so on. But look, they're gonna infiltrate your companies. HR legal policies will change. They're in your companies, right? We have to respect religious freedom, diversity policies. They'll create disruption. Even if they're not there, they'll make you have to respect pronouns or something. Anything that will be disruptive to your current culture, right? Intelligence, law enforcement, they're going to talk about we need more engagement with Muslim leaders, which are the people that actually run the networks that you're concerned about, like the Muslim Brotherhood, right? We need, in other words, we need to get in bed with the enemy as opposed to stop them, right? We need to build bridges, not walls. Now, these are nice moral slogans or these nice emotional slogans, but this doesn't take into account the actual factual reality, right? So the system, right, will protect the infiltrators as stakeholders, right? So they protect the stakeholders, the infiltrators as stakeholders. They're partners in our community. They've been, Muslims have been part of America since the beginning. Yeah, sure. That's why you have the U.S. Marines, because they had to go get the slaves that the Muslims captured from Libya, the shores of Tripoli. That's the contribution of Islam was extortion and slavery. So in the transition phase, you have to identify who in the system benefits from not seeing the problem. Who benefits? Follow the money, right? Follow the power. Who gets power? Who gets benefit? Separate the naive from the complicit. They're going to be stupid people. Quarantine those. Identify the complicit and punish them. Right? Shame the complicit.
Yeah, that's also the punishing.
Punish the complicit.
We don't do that out of politeness.
The naive can be educated. They can be shown doctrine. They can be shown precedents, and they can be shamed, right? But the complicit, you isolate, you remove them from decision making, identify who they are, name them and shame them, expose them, right? At the national threat level, what is?
And I want to say, as somebody who did that, right, in very high levels, somebody who worked directly on the Abraham Accords, where I in a room full of important people, I told him that he's a joke because he's working with those people. Everybody came to me afterwards and said, "Thank you for saying that." And it's like, it was so clear the crowd was with me. I'm just saying that with even the most extreme situations where I thought I'm going to be standing alone, I found myself with 80% agreement in a crowd that I thought would be hostile to my approach. And people were expressing it. So it was clear.
Yeah. Okay. So at a national level, right, Islam is infiltrated should trigger a shift in national posture from integration, right? Because stop using the terms. Remember, they always talk about integration or integration has failed or whatever. Stop talking about that. It's a failed strategy. You need to talk about containment and rollback. So use those words. We need containment. We need rollback. Otherwise, just try remigration. That's also a good word. Okay,
no, but I don't believe in remigration.
Emotionally, that's a little hard for people right now. It's not politically easy. So say, well, we need containment and rollback.
So my solution is
we're going to contain and roll them back. We're going to remigrate them. You see, so you just put a buffer in between, right? Containment and rollback. Okay.
I love how the joke landed in, like, it's not joking, it's truth, but like I landed in delay.
So, right. So then clarify the target. Know who you're fighting. Know who your enemy is. Seriously, you got to know who you're fighting. Who needs to be punched in the nose? You got to know this, right? We're not talking about Muslims in general. Right now, I don't mean that you're not talking about Muslims like the Tucker Carlson, but most Muslims are nice people. No. We're not talking about fuzzy cloud of people. We got to say, hold on. Start with the major players, right? You got to say, hold on. The Muslim, no, it's too vague. Be specific. Yes.
Lloyd, I want to say something specific. If you all guys, you're not sending this conversation, which is practical and doable, achievable, and I don't think you're going to find anywhere on the internet people who are with our credentials who would give you the exact way to deal with a problem, and honestly, without any or whatever, or stuttering, you all are now just as responsible to spread it to anyone who can. Like, I know some people just cannot cannot comprehend a conversation that is not real, like not more than 2 minutes, but every person that you know that can hold their thoughts for enough time to listen to something that is more like a podcast, you are now either complicit or not. You make your choice, right? It's like you are now making your own choices on whether you want to solve this problem or not.
It's actually simple. Just phrase it as you are either part of the solution or part of the problem. So when I say
Here is a
Muslims,
demonstration
we don't
of
mean a
somebody who
vague.
was born in an operating system that is outside of the box, and therefore he says, I came from a Muslim family and most Muslims are not nice people. Find the people who manage to create an operating system before culture. That is usually very high IQ people, because apparently when I talked to my uncle, he said, like, I was functioning in a very similar way when I was 1.5 years old. It means I bypassed genetically and whatever cultural system could have been installed in me. So these people exist. They're going to be our allies. They need to operate in a different way. But for the rest of you guys, you either spread the messaging, right? We're laying out to it's very specific people who can tolerate this kind of conversation and make it doable. You are now just as responsible as anyone else, and it's your choice. It's your choice. And I want another thing. In the end of the days, right? If you get your granddaughters or whatever, right? Get whatever, or your grandchildren, or even if you don't have any and you die like alone when everybody around you is like suffering and wearing fucking goats. All right. I want you to remember this moment, reflect on it, and say, did I do my due diligence? Because if I didn't, I deserve it. Okay, let's continue.
So you can't have vague targets. You need specific targets. You need clarity. So don't go after Muslims in general. Go after structures, mosques, shut down mosques, identify the problems with the mosques, figure out who's preaching there, name them, shame them, make calls to shut them down. Schools that teach this stuff, right? Islamic schools, regular schools, schools that are participating in mosque visits and not celebrating Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever. NGOs, political organizations, all of these that explicitly hold classical Islamic law and supremacist doctrine or support these, right? Identify, target, political action at the grassroots level, public action, talk about them, identify them, name them, right? Let them know you're looking. Now, you need some minimal realistic national level steps, conceptual, not policy details. You don't have policy yet, right? But you need to end the fiction. For instance, you need social media. Your voice matters, right? Jihad doctrine is not just an extremist interpretation, okay? You have to call it what it is in classical sources. And stop getting too stuck on the Quran and Hadiths. Look at the Sharia. But you need to name it and shame it. It's not extremist, it's normal. It's part and parcel. It is something that will never go away. So don't let them fool you. Be open and honest. Call to cut funding, call to cut recognition of these organizations, call to ban them. Social pressure, emotional pressure moves the political needle as well. Okay, threaten with your votes, right? So all of these organizations that teach Sharia supremacy and encourage all of these kids who are 10 years old in British schools to go to mosques, make a noise, public pressure, shaming, right? And of course, they're going to speak the language of rights and cultural and whatever. You just say, hey, look, the line is here. I don't go any further. You must tighten immigration and citizenship. Oops, typo. Citizenship criteria around clear rejection. So you need a citizenship test. You need an immigration test. You also just got to start banning immigration. These are all talking points you've got to raise on social media. You've got to raise it in call-in shows. You've got to put it on X, etc. The stuff makes a difference, okay? And you don't want vague moderation. This term, political Islam, yeah, there's no such thing. There's just Islam, right? Don't talk about moderation. So moderation is a bad word. We don't want that. You want Islam gone, right?
Exactly.
Systematically map and monitor foreign funding of mosques, schools, and research centers, cultural centers, educational funds.
At this point in our lives, you're going to find it in your backyard. For those who don't understand the situation we're at, this is going to be at your backyard. You have to search at a maximum of 100 meters. I'm sorry, let me say, and I don't know, like whatever yards or feet or whatever number, couple of hundreds of feet, or just a sphere around you, and you will find all of those things to fight against. I promise. Continue,
Right.
please.
So follow the money, like I showed you earlier with the funding. Okay, if you know what the funding is, you can talk to the people in your government. Write to your congressman if that works for you. Right. Write articles, write posts, talk to people.
A lot of countries have freedom of religion. There is a difference between institutionalized freedom of religion based on state and a real life community-based freedom of religion. Freedom of religion also means freedom from religion. So you cannot enforce religion on somebody who doesn't want it. Do you know what that means? It means that you as a citizen can say that not in my school, not in my community, we don't want it. Because you are not a state. You are not the state. The laws of the state do not apply on you as a person. Do you understand? Thank you. Continue, sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of things being said in the chat that are not necessarily the most.
No, a lot of people make that mistake, thinking that something that applies to the state applies on them. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Freedom of speech, that's institutional, that's not yours. You don't need to tolerate anything, any bullshit. It's not on you. You are not obligated. There is no law like that. Freedom of speech or freedom of press. That's against the state, not against it. That's not on private life.
Yeah, but the thing is, Islam's not a religion; it's a political system first. So this is not.
Oh well, that doesn't matter. Don't confuse them with facts. I'm just saying that they can be bullies in real life, and it's not illegal. And it's time they internalize it. State and people different. Effectiveness. People are more effective. Stop being losers with excuses. Thank you. Continue, please.
No, so you have to attack the funding. I'll give you an example here, right? Look at this. This is from 2017. Now, this is 9 years later. Hot trend in 2017, Rise of Islamic Banks on Main Street, USA, by Riyad Mohammed at CNBC, right? United States, a quiet financial revolution is going on under the radar of the public eye. It's the rise of Islamic financial institutions from the Midwest to major national banks. Islamic banks that are known to fund terrorism. And they lobby in Washington, D.C. They have ties to Hillary Clinton, right? And you have Iranian banks and so on. And they've become a force to be reckoned with since the year 2000. Their capital grew from $200 billion in 2000 to nearly $3 trillion in 2016. Now, that is significant money. They're expecting $4 trillion in the 2020s, right? Now, JP Morgan Chase, the largest bank in the US, is $2.5 trillion. That was in 2018, right? Now, these Islamic banks work together in concert, right? And they've got more money than JP Morgan, right? So these people have significant clout. So you need to follow the money. You need to cut off the money. You need to ban investment, property.
So let's say you have suddenly Islamic ceramics free community center in your backyard, right? There's you find the Islamic community center that has a ceramics class, and it's weird because it's very cheap. You got a lid, and you burn that lid. Let's say there is a ceramics macrame class, right, in your community, but for some reason it's very cheap, and it's Islamic. You can see it's very Islamic coded, right? Mm-hmm. That means there is money coming from somewhere else, pretending that it's only just a simple ceramics workshop.
Then you're looking at money laundering. You're looking at visa laundering.
Exactly. You look at that and think, that's weird. Let's burn it down. Let's find the lead and make sure they don't get that money.
Yeah, but also you need to call for investigations, do things. For instance, in the UK, you've got all of these vape shops, you've got all these barber shops. These are all, for instance, you have a fish and chip shop or something, a shawarma shop, or even better, the kebab shop that's being run by some guy, right? It's a small booth that's big enough to hold only maybe 2-3 people at a squeeze, and they've issued 150 visas in the last 2 years. Maybe you want to ask the police about that. Maybe you want to write to your politician. Understand these are issues. Bring it to the public's attention. Someone will do something. Someone's got to do something, right? So just talk about it. Bring attention to it. Do what you can. Jump up and down, but do something. It does work. Eventually, something will happen, right? So then also we have to name things. We've got to be open. Where'd my mouse go? My gosh. What just happened? Sorry, let me go back here. Let me cancel that. Okay, there we go. My mouse disappeared because of that. Right. So if you won't name the doctrine as the threat, that's Islamic law. If you won't call it Islam, instead of Islamism, radical Islam, Islamic, it's Islam. The problem is Islam, right? All your countermeasures become theater if you won't name the doctrine, because you have to name the enemy and attack the enemy.
So I want to emphasize that this is way more than the Islamic doctrine, because the operation system is actually, the damage was done way before, right? So once you have a structure of no questioning and then an axiomatic, that rigid axioms, right? This is to something to fight against. So you don't even need the doctrine. The moment you realize there is no freedom of speech, and that is the most basic thing, right? You cannot people react volatility.
I just mean you have to name a
with
thing.
volatile.
You have to have a thing to focus on.
Right.
You need a specific thing.
I agree, but for our audience, notice, right, that it's much deeper than that, and you need to know it.
Yeah.
So that you won't get confused, right? So let's say somebody is presenting as if they didn't internalize, right, the Islamic law. That doesn't mean their functionality is good for the system. Yes, please.
Yeah. So know what name it. Don't use euphemisms. Name the thing. Call it what it is. Say Islam's the problem, right? It's not just terror groups. It's not just the jihadis. Islam is the problem. This all comes with Islam, right? It's the Trojan horse. Don't say, well, it's the one guy that came out of the Trojan horse. That no, the whole Trojan horse is the problem, right? So otherwise, if you can't name the thing and focus on the right thing, everything you do is just theater. It's not even relevant. So, right? So many people here are going to be, you sense the danger, but you don't know what to do beyond despair and anger. First of all, despair is what they want you to feel. They want you to feel isolation. That is part of the ideological warfare game. They want you to feel isolated. So talk to people. Go on social media, talk to the person on the bus next to you. Once you talk, everyone else is going to feel encouraged, empowered to speak up. Some won't agree, some will agree, some will think about it. But also the people who don't agree, they're going to feel, oh my God, I'm threatened now. I feel weak because my indoctrination is not working on this guy, right? So you have to speak up. It affects them psychologically.
They run from you.
Yeah.
They see you as a danger, and they cannot. It threatens them on an existential, operation system level. So they run away from you.
Yeah. Now, of course, you're going to deal with simple things like surely not all Muslims, right? Surely not all Nazis. I know there was some really nice, Mr. Brown down the street was a lovely guy. Whatever. Okay. Islam is the problem. Don't let them trap you in little phrases. Not all of Islam is a problem.
The only way that this sentence applies is that, okay, not all Muslims. We can need to find all the Muslims that are not and make them take care of the rest. And if they don't take care of them or do this, right? And by the way, it's a process, right? So you have to remember, it's you set up, you need to, so why am I talking about operating systems? Do you know how the Israeli intelligence works? They recognize an operating system that doesn't fit the environment. And that means that sometimes they are completely aligned and loyal to the cause. But because the operating system is the strongest thing you have, once they plant the seed in the right operating system, that's it for them. Because they're going to cooperate with the Israelis. It's the strongest indicator. Strongest.
Yeah, Hope in Christ is planting a seed to let them know that we know. I agree. Yes, let them know, right? Give them also a sense of fear, the very same fear that you feel, they feel. Send it back to them, right? Let them know you didn't fool us. And if you keep pushing, well, maybe you're going to get a result you don't like, right? So they will, because remember, they'd be in your face if they thought they had the strength, but they don't. So you let them know, hey guys, I see you. Okay, I see you. Shame them into backing off, or shame them into doubt, right? Now, also, it's Islam. Don't focus on Muslims. But the problem is, if someone says they're a Muslim, then they believe in Islam, then at some level, they could just be a sleeper agent. And at some point, they're going to go, yeah, I'm following this stuff.
Exactly. And there are people, and you know what's the best way to know? By the way, did I say operating systems? You know what's the best way to know what Jews would switch to the other side? Operating system mismatch. It always works. Also in your own communities, know that you cannot work with people with the wrong operating system. And that means that they would gravitate towards Islam even if they're not Muslim by birth. Very important, because they're also your enemy, and they are dangerous because they're just as dangerous as the people who don't have the operating system that fits Islam inside Islamic communities, because let me tell you, you can use those people to completely bring down a country.
Yeah, that's above my pay grade. But look, your first phase is disbelief, right? You go, look, it can't be all Muslims. No,
well, it's easy when you are an Israeli and it's
Islam,
clear
because
that
you're going to go, look, people, don't think people, think systems, right? Think systems.
Right.
Islam is a system. It's a political system. Communism, you name it. It's the same thing. Phase two, typically it's anger, the whole denial and anger phase, right? We've been lied to by the media, the clergy, the government, etc., right? Or they failed to take the correct action, etc. Then your phase three, temptation to fatalism, is too late. The elites are sold out. They want you to do that because they want you to give up. They want you to give up. They want you to feel despair, isolation, and make you give up. Don't give them that. Say no, right? Then phase four, discipline. What can I do concretely in my sphere? Talk to people, write, talk. Don't be quiet. They want to censor you. They want you to be quiet. They can't shut up all of you. Think about it. 10, 20 years ago, how many people were talking about Islam on the internet? Almost nobody. Now, there was no ex-Muslims. Now they're everywhere. Now, the average person, you go on any podcast today that talks about Islam, the average commenter in the chat knows more about Islam than most Muslims. I mean, the level of education is fantastic, right? So,
right. But it's still interesting because one of the things that confuses them, I'm going back to the operation systems like all the time, is that if you know more than Muslims, that means that Muslim is not going to operate according to that doctrine, right? Because it doesn't know it. No, they still do. It's hardwired. They still do. They don't know it. They do. Okay, important.
Yeah, someone mentioned love jihad or someone, but yeah, that's going to be off topic for me right now. So that's a different. Okay, get doctrinally literate on Islam, from the Quran, the Sirah, Hadith, standard fiqh, instead of media narratives. However, I would say go straight to the Sharia. Go read Reliance of the Traveler. Please, just go read Reliance of the Traveler. It'll explain exactly when the Quran is relevant and when the Hadiths are relevant. You won't have to figure it out. They will tell you, right? Politically, support candidates who name political Islam. Sorry, my bad. But this term, political Islam, they're going to use it, but just start calling it Islam, okay? But candidates who speak about Islam openly and explicitly and are willing to take reputational hits to oppose it, those are the people you want to support, okay? Your votes are going to matter.
Let's take a break for a moment. I want to go through a couple, like the super chats.
And the last one, I'm nearly done, yeah.
Yeah. I just let's take a break because I think it's a good break point. A big problem is no one will dare to take the veiled woman put in front lies by their consequence. No one will dare to condemn the religious significance of this approach. Well played. What do we do? So this is why I constantly remind people in my channel that I am a feminist. And therefore, I believe that that it's not just the Qatari prince, but also his mother that need to be complete. You choose whatever school of Sharia you want, but the bottom axiom is the same one. So here is feminism, strong feminism. Remember that feminism means that you judge people by what they do and say, and not by what they appear like. Very important. Thank you. Okay, so Rafi, thank you so much for your support. Shana, Eric Weinstein also mentioned. Eric Weinstein has also mentioned this. Chinese Americans will ask him about Jewish creativity. Yeah, they're trying really, really hard to figure out how that works in a way that they had invested a lot to try to position themselves inside the Israeli community, only to figure out that they can see the output, but not the underlying system. Which, by the way, if you know those Chinese people, send it to me because I know the underlying system as well. I can break it down for them if they want. I mean, they spend a lot of money trying to figure it out. I'm telling you, I can do it without easy. Shana, Muslims have to build a completely new operating system, which is harder than even living abusive Christian sex, which is more like a systems update. I don't know. I don't know how to compare it.
Islam needs to be destroyed.
It is thank you.
Dysfunctional.
Yes. Shana, growth per generation wasn't taught basic fun. Yeah. Why? Because the infiltration is here. So the infiltration is here and it's deep. And it made sure that to take away the cognitive abilities of the next generation so they wouldn't be able to fight Islam. And they do it knowingly. Why do I know that? It's not only that the Chinese have an active cognitive OS studies, right? They do it actively, trying to figure out how to install cognitive OS in people. It's also that this method of creating a zombie generation is already it's more simple than trying to figure out cognitive systems, because this specific OS, they don't need to work hard to understand how it works, and that formula was already figured out 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, so it's not hard. So of course they do memorization, reading techniques, no questions, no open questions, no discussion, no real, and punishment for somebody who gets out of line. This is how they do the brain damage, and it's something that already exists in our societies for a long time. So yes, super easy. Do you want to add something, Lloyd? Yeah.
No, I think you did fine there.
All right, thank you, Sus Sunshine, for your super sticker. And here is a question. I agree with what you say. However, I know way too many Muslims and Arabs who are super productive, and ironically, it's me as a dumb Hindu who struggled at school. Muslims are more talented than me. Muslims can be, I know a lot of Muslims that can be very smart, very productive, right? The thing is, you go to their faces and say Islam is shit. And then you see where that goes. And from there, you can understand what kind of operating system and intuition. You don't need to know too much. You're gonna, you can have some intuition. They have, and if they are very smart and their OS is still Islamic, they're very dangerous, and they should be. They should be followed. They should be. They need surveillance. And do you have anything to say here, Lloyd?
No, that's okay. Doing fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, those are.
And here, Rebecca asking, what's the connection between Relit, MI6, and Muslim Brotherhood? Is it they all fuck each other, like literally in bed?
There's a huge, actually, if you look at the British government, there's a very tight relationship with Saudis, with the Saudi oil money. There's a huge relationship. Like, for instance, Bandar Bush, that was his nickname. He was the head of intelligence for the Saudis. He was also the U.S. ambassador at one point under George Bush. They invested something like $1.6 billion into George Bush's companies and so on. They were very tight in. But for instance, he's got landing rights in the UK at a military airbase now. So he's got a 747 and he can land at any time he likes at a US airbase. He stays at royal family properties, right? So there's a huge, and I think a lot of them there will be definitely secret Muslims. A lot of them converted, a lot of them haven't admitted that fact, they haven't changed their names. So there's going to be a lot of oil money, there's going to be a lot of influence, there's going to be a lot of benefits. Even Prince Charles,
and a lot of sex too.
Probably. You look at Prince Charles, he's very much involved with a Sufi order. and he's very much involved with this one particular Muslim group. He dresses up in the whole Arabic garb. He takes part in ceremonies. He has his little Muslim dress. He's got his Muslim sword, his little scimitar, and he says some things that, for a Christian and Western monarch, are a little questionable, just fractionally so. So yeah, I'd say there's questions to be asked. There would definitely be some issues there. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, let's continue.
Yeah, that was one I could answer or respond to. It's like in my ballpark, more or less. Yeah, let's just finish. I'm nearly done here. So just to finish the last few points. Yeah, but thank you. This has been really good. And thanks to the audience, for the very active audience. So become doctrinally literate. But if you want to bypass the whole grind of the Sirah, Hadith, and so on, and the Quran, just go straight to the Reliance of the Traveler, the most popular English language Sharia manual. It is the most popular Sharia manual in the world, and it explains all of it. It is so blunt. It's so easy to understand. It's all there for you. They explain what this verse says, what that hadith means, boom, done. And they tell you it's ugly, it's disgusting. Don't believe media narratives, right? Politically, support the right candidates. Institutionally, pressure the schools. Social media pressure works. X works. YouTube videos work. TikTok works. Things go viral. People see. Understand, you don't have to have 1 million followers. You don't have to have you don't have to have 500,000 followers. You know what? If you've got a channel that has 3,000 people or less, or whatever the case might be, but you see, it's not about size. You have a niche.
Right. And if you look decent and say that Muslims fuck goats, you're going to be popular instantly. So it's not that hard. Just think about something similar to say and go.
Yeah. So you have a niche, understand? So it's who's watching. You could have 10 people watching, but maybe you've got some very important people, very influential people, very active people. So it's not always about how many. It's about who. Just pay attention. Don't always think that your channel's not the biggest. It's who's watching, right? So pressure schools, churches, councils to stop platforming Islamic organizations. Shame them, right? Name them and shame them, right? Stop talking about faith partners. Say, no, I do not accept this. Just start saying no, right? Say you cannot have faith partners and in ecumenical action without examining the doctrine. Say, let's talk about the doctrine honestly. Explain this to me. Be blunt, be public, right? Black drops in the milk. Keep doing it. Don't stop. Okay, now systems that rely on, now I have your leftist systems, right? Because most of these are going to be leftist, that rely on emotion over doctrine, right? We've all seen the wokies on that score. Slogans over sources, okay? Slogans, we know what the slogans sound like, right? People that deal with slogans over facts, that want to mouth slogans over thinking, right? That want to use emotion over working through doctrines on a page, right? Those people are easily sucked into this. They are a threat. They need to be quarantined. They need to be isolated. So all these unity myths, we can all be one. What? Sorry?
There is a very important commentator. Well, not surprised you showed half of your boobs on your Buy Me Coffee page. Okay, here, what I'm going to say. We're at war. Show your effing boobs or whatever needs to be showed. You're in war. Do you understand what war is? What do you think is more important? To not show your boobs or you to get somebody raped in the future because you didn't want to show your boobs and go viral? Where are your priorities? Thank you. Continue, please.
Like I was saying earlier, I'm lesbian. Yeah, I only sleep with women. So okay, so sorry. Yeah, I was going to have a look at that at Buy Me a Coffee, actually. So, because I wanted to see that picture. I've never seen that, Rebecca. So, okay. Where? I don't see it.
I don't know what
Where?
It's toxic. Okay. Doesn't matter. Okay. In theory.
Yeah, I wanted to see that for myself. Okay, so now, unity myths over hard questions. Why can't we all get along? Can't we all just get along? All religions are the same. There was an idiot that said that earlier in the chat. And, I think all religions are, all of those people with unity myths, we're all just people. We all love the same things. Yeah, false, okay? All of these people end up vulnerable to Islamic infiltration because they've already trained themselves not to see contradictions. They've trained themselves not to confront the texts. They've not learned to read, and they've got comprehension problems, right? So a civilization that cannot face its own religious pathologies, and these are pathologies, right? Emotions over doctrine, slogans over sources, and unity myths, they will not face Islam's religious pathology. So you need to deal with your own internal, and being woke, that's a pathology. Being a leftist, that's a religious pathology. Wokeism is a religion, right? Same with the green agenda. So the real danger here is not that Islam has infiltrated us. You can get rid of them. I mean, they kicked them out of Spain eventually. They kicked them out of a lot of places. We have built cultures and institutions that would rather die than admit that we're wrong about Islam. They would rather accept being taken over than admit they were wrong. Yes, King Charles belonged to Fridtjof Schön's Tariqa when he was prince. Yep. He may well still be involved there, but that's a very well-known, very well-documented. That's a tiny little picture down there. You know that. It's okay. I mean, that's a really tiny. I mean, there's only your eyes on the top picture. Sorry. First time I saw that. Okay. Right. So now, can we convince Muslims to embrace our values? The answer is no. Very unlikely. How do you know they're telling the truth? Lying is obligatory within Islam as part of the obligatory doctrines. So, and this is the last 10 rules then I'll finish off. Can we convince Muslims to embrace our values? Just assume no, because you can't change Islam. Maybe the Muslims, or one or two, but probably not. And Islam, no, right? Muslim daily life is saturated with religious rituals, religious slogans, constant repetition of slogans and phrases, and and so the decision making is constantly spent on what does Islam say? How am I supposed to behave? How do I prove my credentials to my peers? How do I save myself from the dirty kuffar? Instead of what is true, what is correct, what is logical, right? They don't. Two, they've invested years of prayer, fasting, memorization, and self-denial. So admitting that Islam is false feels like admitting that entire life was a waste. And looking at what these boat people are doing, you realize how little they think of you and the women, right, that you care about. From childhood, they are trained that disobedience means hell. So even thinking about leaving literally triggers terror. These
thinking, right? Just thinking. You could have said just thinking means they go to hell.
Yeah. So this, someone mentioned NLP. Muslims have long, since the 800s, since the 900s, since the 9th century, they've had a system of NLP that they actually work with. It's called Adab al-Jadal, right? So they've had a system that predates NLP by 1,200 years, right? So these people have genuine panic attacks. I've seen Muslims have panic attacks. Believe me, I've seen them worry that they're going to get found out. They don't just worry, that there's genuine fear. The system only shows the soft
just
side.
Make sure that there is not something that they can explode with when they go through it.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, that's the problem with Muslim children. They blow up so fast. So yeah. Yeah, so the Muslim system. Okay, so their system only shows the soft side. It's very tactical. It's very strategic. They show the soft side at first to deceive, right? And they hide all the worst things, the worst doctrines, until later. So the person never feels they have the full picture to judge. They hide it from their own, not just from you. And also, it is treason for their people to share that information with you. They would be revealing secrets that would harm the Muslims. Now, their map of reality is built on Islamic teaching from day one. From the age of 4, they're going to the madrasa and they're being taught to hate you, right? Anything that contradicts Islam feels not just wrong, but dangerous and chaotic. They're so inculcated into this that they can't think of anything else. Anything wrong, anything different is just
can't
wrong.
Think. They cannot think. Yes.
Yeah, it's emotional. That is genuine. Their whole nervous system has been so conditioned to feel this is normal that any change is like drug withdrawal. It's impossible. Their family, their whole honor system, marriage prospects, community are all inside of Islam. Walking away is like social death, and they could also be killed, right? Ridda, that is the punishment for leaving Islam, for apostasy, is genuinely to kill. I've covered that before on the channel. We've shown that, right? This is the law in the Sharia. This is not a secret, right? So this feels like genuine death because you're losing everything you believe in. Everyone outside of Islam is framed as corrupt. If you're not a Muslim, that means you, right? You are hostile, you're inferior. So any critic is dismissed before the arguments are even heard, okay? Islamic catchphrases. right? So don't forget, the well has been poisoned against you already, in other words. So it's not even worth trying. You don't know, besides, because lying is obligatory, you don't know if they're even telling you the truth, right? So don't take the risk. I mean, it's like, don't take the risk. You just don't know. 8, Islamic catch. You know what? I just saw an article today of a girl in Germany, a Syrian girl in Germany they're building a container. She's in a home. They're building a container to isolate her and quarantine her because she's considered so dangerous. They can't leave her with the public. She's stabbed people. She's attacked people with knives. She's like 9 years old or something. And this girl she's jihad crazy, and I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So everyone outside of Islam is framed as corrupt. Okay. Islamic catchphrases like inshallah, Allah knows best. These are, when you repeat something all the time, you get indoctrinated, and they are taught to say this. So these are like NLP anchors. They anchor the states, they anchor the thoughts, and you stop thinking. You don't go, well, let me do critical analysis. You go, Allah wants this. You say, inshallah, fate will. So in other words, they are simply just indoctrinating themselves. They don't have to. This is totalism. No one points a gun at you anymore. You are forced with the community pressure. You're so scared of losing your community that keeps you there, the community, but also you do it to yourself. You program yourself by using these phrases that are so foreign to Western culture. And therefore they've indoctrinated themselves millions of times like this. So these stop thought. These are thought terminating cliches. So they have instant emotional closure. They don't have real reflection. They have an emotional response. And this bypasses the thinking, it bypasses the prefrontal cortex, and boom, they just have emotional responses. You cannot communicate. Last 2, the system trains them to see doubt as sin. It's fitna. In fact, you can be killed for causing fitna, for causing doubt that would make someone leave Islam. They call it temptation, fitna, temptation. But fitna is actually caused to kill you, right?
And I want to quote here.
Sure.
What is the word doubt? Dubito ergo sum. That's the first. Dubito ergo sum, or in other words, cogito ergo sum.
To think, I think, therefore I am. Yeah.
I doubt, therefore I am, or in other words, what is the same? I think, therefore I am.
Yeah, but he was also there was also a double meaning within his terms. He was calling himself God. I think, therefore I am. See, the I am before Abraham was.
He had a lot of players, yeah, but there he got something right, because doubt.
Yeah. No, but he was playing here. He was actually playing on that, because before Abraham was, I am. Right, that's a quote Jesus makes. Before Abraham was, I am, or the I am is God. Right. So he was saying, I think, therefore I am, referring to God. I am God. So this was one of the atheist things. So he was actually
from what I remember, he was trying to understand what's true and what's not to comedians. But the reason I love that, because he actually had like a breakthrough on how to ask questions. But when he said that intuitively, the fun part is when you don't doubt, your identity is very fractured and fragmented, and therefore you're volatile.
Yep. No, but this is a control mechanism, right? You push back against doubt. Anything that causes doubt, you reject. It creates pain, right? Emotional pain. So you see doubt as a sin, and it's going to send you to hell. And the person who's making you doubt is evil. So they poison the well this way. So the healthy impulse to question is smothered before it can even grow. And then finally, all of these layers, your ritual layers, all the things that you do, you've got to hold your hands like this, and you've got to say these words and step into the toilet with your left foot, but into the mosque with the right. And all of this nonsense. You're going to wipe your bum with your left hand, but eat with your right. All of this nonsense, all of these rituals, they ingrain identity. It's behaviors, right? So all the fear, all the identity forming stuff, all the information control, they don't tell you what's in the Sharia, right? The whole these are tribal people. These are also very tribal people. They're not Westerners. They're not Westernized, right? They think in a tribal sense, and tribes hate each other. I come from Africa, and I'm not tribal, but they are tribal blacks. And yeah, they don't like other people very much. Tribe first. Right? Even their language, these all work together to complete this mental cage. So you're not arguing with one belief, you're pushing against the entire psychological environment. It's not an intellectual battle of is 1 + 1 = 2 or equal to 3. You're pushing back against the entire system that in multiple layers, multiple ways has caged this person's mind. I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. And I think we can wrap up if you're cool with that. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here. I think it was the most productive talk we could have ever. So you guys now are just as responsible to making sure that everything that was laid down before you happens.
Yeah, guys, use your voice, speak.
Exactly. Thank you so much for being here. Good night.